The Board of Trustees of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts voted Thursday to rename the building as the Trump Kennedy Center. At an Oval Office event on Thursday, President Trump gave his reaction to the vote.
I was honored by it. The board is a very distinguished board, most distinguished people in the country. And I was surprised by it. I was honored by it. You know, we're saving the building. We saved the building. The building was in such bad shape, both physically, financially, and every other way. And now it's very solid, very strong.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt congratulated Trump, writing on X, "I have just been informed that the highly respected board of the Kennedy Center, some of the most successful people from all parts of the world, have just voted unanimously to rename the Kennedy Center to the Trump Kennedy Center because of the unbelievable work President Trump has done."
This move did raise legal concerns, however, as to whether the board has the authority to rename the arts institution, which was designated by Congress in 1964. President John F. Kennedy's niece, Maria Shriver, criticized the move, writing on X, "It is beyond comprehension that the sitting president has sought to rename this great memorial dedicated to President Kennedy. It is beyond wild that he would think adding his name in front of President Kennedy's name is acceptable. It is not. Next thing, perhaps he will want to rename JFK Airport, rename the Lincoln Memorial, the Trump Lincoln Memorial, the Trump Jefferson Memorial, the Trump Smithsonian. The list goes on. Can we not see what is happening here? Come on, my fellow Americans, wake up. This is not dignified. This is not funny."
By Thursday afternoon, the center's website header was updated to say the Trump Kennedy Center.
The action left many Democrats fuming. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, an ex officio member of the board, said the vote wasn't unanimous. Let's listen.
I am bringing this to you live today because what you may hear is that there was a unanimous vote to rename the Kennedy Center the Trump Center. Be clear, I was on that call, and as I tried to push my button to voice my concern, to ask questions, and certainly not to vote in support of this, I was muted. Each time I tried to speak, I was muted. Participants were not allowed to voice their concerns who were online.
And here is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries also slamming the decision.
The so-called Kennedy Center board wants to rename the Kennedy Center after Donald Trump. Are you kidding me? Like, how does that help deal with the affordability crisis in this country?
I'm not really surprised to see Hakeem Jeffries seizing on that point. I think, from in terms of the politics of it, I find it an absurd decision for reasons we'll get into. But in terms of the politics of it, it does give Democrats more ammunition to argue that Trump is more focused on his own aggrandizement and on his own ego than he is on resolving issues that face people in their daily lives. I think that's where the political weakness or vulnerability of it lies. I find the thing itself kind of ridiculous and part of Trump's ongoing insecurity, as I would see it, of him constantly trying to rename things after himself or lift himself up. We had the Trump Institute of Peace recently. There's controversy of a different kind around this, the Walk of Fame or whatever it's called in the White House, which now has all these plaques mocking President Biden, President Obama, various others. So kind of a ridiculous move, but with some potential political ramifications, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's silly and a distraction. I actually think the Kennedy Center has been doing really great work under Rick Grinnell, which is why this is annoying, because they've been refocusing a lot of the programming on classical music and fine art and also popular shows like The Sound of Music. And they've had some really great events that have broken attendance records, and they've been selling a lot of tickets. And I think that's wonderful. Then you throw Trump's name on it, and all of a sudden it's less about trying to actually reform the center to appeal to a wider swath of Americans. And it becomes, again, another thing that's trying to cement the Trump legacy or make it about the president himself. And it seems so unnecessary to me. And I wrote about this in my newsletter earlier this week, about the plaques on the Walk of Fame, or the Presidential Walk of Fame, whatever it's called, which is that I think even Trump supporters are fine with these sort of trolling, cry more liberals kind of moves when there's a lot of accomplishments happening, but there haven't been many major moves in the past few months. I mean, there's been the DOJ coming out and saying they're not going to pursue cases that have disparate impact liability anymore under civil rights law, which I think is a huge win. But outside of that, there's been a lot of calls for the president to focus his attention on domestic politics, to tackle the affordability crisis, and to take Americans' concerns seriously. And instead, he's been calling it a hoax and basically saying the economy is A plus 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 plus. Everybody knows that it's not. And so you can't get away with this trolling, everything's named after Trump and gold now when you're not handling the basics.
I agree with that. And in fact, just yesterday on the show, I was talking in a different context about some of the polling that shows that people now believe that the economy, for example, that Trump is much more primarily responsible for the economy than former President Biden, who Trump
because he's been so defensive about it.
Right, exactly, and he's making all those arguments. And this was a Fox News poll that also showed many more people believe they have been hurt by Trump's economic policies than have been helped by them. So I think that is obviously a problem. On the point of the Kennedy Center, I do agree that putting his name on it puts off probably a significant number of its existing client base, and the bet is that they can increase attendance from other quarters. There was a report in the Washington Post a while back, which I know Rick Grinnell disputed pretty vigorously. The Post's report was that ticket sales had fallen by 43%. Now, there may be more individual shows within that do have a wider appeal. I have been to the Kennedy Center a very small number of times in my life, all predating the Trump presidency. My basic assumption is that the demographic from which its most frequent clients are drawn is not a Trump-supporting demographic,
No,
to say the very least. So to see, I think that could have some ramifications.
Yeah,
there.
so I'm a regular patron. My husband grew up on classical music. His mom was a trained classical pianist, and so he's kind of been getting me into this music and these shows, and it's really wonderful. We're seeing Handel's Messiah on Sunday, actually, overall, the Kennedy Center hasn't changed that much. And so I think it is a shame when people boycott just because, the Trump administration is involved now. One thing they did add is they added a speakeasy, which I think is really cool because for people who have been to a show, after the show's over, the Kennedy Center totally clears out. It's empty, it's dead, and it's got a really weird vibe. And so they're trying to get people to hang around and enjoy a drink after the show and meet people, which I think is awesome. And again, I just think those things that are sort of common sense and actually business-wise really smart for trying to bring money in are now being distracted from because of this.
Fair enough. Well, bring us your review of Handel's Messiah.
I will.
Next time you're on. Up next, Trump administration officials are making moves to ban gender-affirming care for minors. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back with that.